All right, Harmless Dave here, real media observer, and looking at a crazy story in China that nobody is reporting or it's being underreported. Protests, looting, pets destroyed, mass suicides in Shanghai, China, as people starve during lockdowns. There are pictures of people jumping off of buildings. There are pictures of people who are hanging themselves. Incredible pictures. And I don't think, especially the pictures of the people falling off of buildings and so forth, none of this appears to be, manipulated or doctored or anything like that. So as everyone watches the current show in the theater called Ukraine, yeah, thousands of people are committing suicide in Shanghai, China, as its 25 million residents continue to be locked down, and many of them reportedly starving because they can't get food. All right, here's what of course, this is a humanitarian disaster. And if you're going to intervene somewhere, and by the way, I'm not advocating to intervene. This is China's issue. This is a corrupt government. This is a communist government. And again, a lot of people here, especially those on the left, it's China. They have their own way of doing things. Look, folks, we need to come to grips with ideologies and understand that authoritarianism and communism kind of one and the same here, and we had a bit of authoritarianism here in the United States, in places like Michigan and California, and really in pockets all across the country, wherever there was a blue state or a blue city. And for those of you you don't see that there's a difference between blue and red, I can't help you. I'm beyond blue and red, though. I'm not either. I'm more black pilled than blue pilled or red pilled. I'm certainly never going to be blue pilled, and you could say I'm red pilled on issues, but I'm just looking at the news and thinking to myself, we did this diversion. We went from a war on a pathogen to a war on a specific Russian. That would be Putin, of course, but really our war is taking its toll more on the people of Russia. Although, after hearing about how they're going to back their currency with gold, incredible. I mean, we wanted a new world order, and we've created a new world order. Now, you would say, well, the Russians are palling up with China, and look at what China is doing to their own people here, right? This is what's happening in China. We've forced Russia to pal around here with China and, in some cases, India, right? And by the way, just a little side note, I think we just installed a new president in Pakistan. I think the United States just did a soft coup and got who they wanted to be the leader of Pakistan now. So we are full steam ahead in imperialist empire desires that this country is not the country I grew up in as a kid, or at least my perception for many years was that we were a force for good around the world. We are a force for evil around the world. And we do things in the name of democracy. We're always worried about, we need to preserve democracy. But what we're doing is promoting chaos. We're promoting the overthrow of dictatorships. And we're not looking, into all of the details in these countries. We need something. We need a resource. We need a mineral. We need lithium. We need whatever. And hey, we should kind of look the other way over here, whether it's Sudan, whether it's Somalia, whether it's Yemen. And here we are again doing stupid crap. We're doing stupid crap. And I think the reason I'm covering this story about what's happening in China with the lockdowns is there are people in this country who would like to model after China to try to do this zero policy, which is insane. All around the globe throughout the year in different places, we have winter, we have the shift, we have the axis tilting. And so then the southern hemisphere does stuff that the northern hemisphere was doing. I mean, and people travel, you're gonna restrict all travel. Well, China has locked down their country, or at least this region of the country, right? So people can't go anywhere. And now they're starving to death. And it kind of coincides with this supply chain issue. I mean, all of these different things. If you think people who bring this stuff up are conspiracy theorists, there's so many things that tie together. And nobody's willing to really investigate any of it. It's all just, hey, we got to talk about Ukraine now. So anyway, let me go on with this article. And it's on a website that I probably won't mention because you're not supposed to post anything. If I post this link on YouTube, or not YouTube, but on Twitter or Facebook, they flag it. They say, we found that this is an unsafe website. Unsafe. Maybe the website should social distance from other websites. I don't know. So protests and looting have reportedly started, and horrible images are appearing of people jumping off of buildings while others hang themselves. Dogs and cats are being murdered on the streets. My local newscast does animal stories every morning. They do 4 or 5. Now, I like animals. I'm not saying I don't like animals. I had dogs as a kid, but I had a few tragedies with dogs, so I don't want to keep reliving the tragedies. So, as much as I'd like to have a pet, but I understand why people have pets, because they give people comfort. And the bigger reason why you would want to have a pet these days is because most people suck, all right? And pets don't suck. Pets will give you unconditional love, whereas most people won't do that. And I'm being totally serious here. So anyway, this is happening in Shanghai. And the author says, I have spent time in Shanghai in the past, and it is the most modern city in China. Its financial and shopping district would rival Manhattan in New York, or the Magnificent Mile in Chicago, or Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. If this can happen in Shanghai, it can happen anywhere. Now, there's the tinfoil hat point, right? Words cannot describe what I have watched today from reports coming from people on the ground there. So I've created a short video montage, which obviously I won't be playing, which can communicate what is happening in Shanghai. Now, the funny thing is this person has it on Odyssey and BitChute and Telegram. It is very graphic. It will disturb you. I cry like a baby every time I watch these clips. But the big tech social media platforms are censoring much of this, and I am not seeing much of this at all in either the corporate media or the alternative media. So I am the alternative media. So here I am at least giving you the information. If I can figure out how to link this from one of these two alternative platforms, I will do so. They have a picture here of completely empty streets in a city of 25 million people. I mean, completely empty. There's no movement at all. And I wonder if there are cameras that you can tap into, because sometimes they have, cameras from various cities around the world. And if there was a Shanghai camera, I'm assuming that you could probably just turn it on and see for yourself. But there are so many things here that are, I guess, tied to this particular problem here. Number one on my list, and they mentioned it briefly here, if it can happen in Shanghai, again, that's the tinfoil hat conspiracy, it can happen anywhere. If it can happen, here's how I would do that. If it can happen in Shanghai, it can happen in California. If it can happen in Shanghai, it can happen in New York City. And this is where we're at in the year 2022. I've been hearing little rumbles. I get this thing called coffee and COVID every single day, that numbers are starting to creep up in certain places. And that even though people think they're having victory over this in their local jurisdictions, certain mandates aren't being repealed. Certain laws are not changing. It's just a temporary lull, people. I hate to even say that, because it looked as though we're starting to really push back on this. And I don't know for the life of me how much more humanity can withstand. How much more of this can we take? I often compare what we've been through to waterboarding, because that's what it feels like. You finally get some air, you're able to get up, and then you pledge allegiance to the state. You tell them we'll do whatever you want us to do, and then they turn around and do it to you again. This is tragedy beyond any scope of the imagination. And what's happening in Shanghai, why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it come here? Why wouldn't these people look at China and say, we need to do what they're doing because it's working? Even though you've got suicides, even though you've got people starving. And see, this is where all of that globalist stuff comes into play. And people say, well, we're just, doing our march to the Great Reset. And this obviously is part of that, even though I don't believe China is a player in that. And they will be opting out and resisting, much like Russia and India and maybe Hungary now, since they have somebody in there who really cares about the country. And they hate that. As soon as you bring in, and this is why language like nationalist is like a bad thing. In some cases it is, like the Ukraine nationalists, those are bad nationalists, all right? They have a different, a different goal in mind. But nationalists, meaning I like my country, I consider myself maybe a patriot or a commoner, or just somebody who loves my country for whatever reason and would like my country to succeed. These people higher up on the food chain, they don't care about you. They don't care about your goals and your dreams and your desires. Many of them are probably envious. Like a guy like Trudeau has said, gee, China, I wish I had a government like theirs. I envy it because they can just go in there and steamroll their people and get things done. Yeah, like these lockdowns and people starving to death. They're getting a lot of things done over there in China. So this is where the world is headed unless humanity puts the brakes on it. And right now, humanity is outgunned. We're outnumbered, we're outgunned, and we're outflanked when it comes to propaganda, because a lot of people around the world will probably think, well, I'm glad China is locking down. This, if you just tell some stooge on the street, you say, hey, I hear China's in lockdown and people are starving to death and they're committing suicide. What do you think? Well, so long as they contain it, that's all I'm really concerned about. I don't care how they do it. In fact, I wish they would do that stuff here in the United States. Really? You wish people would starve to death? Oh, people won't starve to death in the United States. We would never let that happen here. Yeah. And that's the logic that you hear. Why would they tell us to do something if it wasn't the right thing to do? Why would they lie to us to such a degree? I mean, that's a giant conspiracy. That would be the biggest news story of the century. Hello, it is the biggest news story of the century. So anyway, I wanted to talk about what's happening in Shanghai, because according to the editor from this article, there isn't a lot of media going out about this. And if it is, it's very like hush hush, and they'll show some pictures, guys in hazmat suits in China running around trying to, contain whatever it is that they're containing, this new round. And the word is about this new round of whatever this is, that it isn't deadly. It isn't. It's less than the last one we had, I think, unless this is something completely different that they're trying to, hatch upon the world. And if it is, then, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble. And people are going to be saying, now is the time. If you've never done the thing, if you've never gone to CVS, now is the time. There's no excuse now for not doing this. It's life or death, especially, if it's if this is a very toxic strain or a deadly strain, then if word about that gets out, then anybody who is against doing this and wants freedom and bodily autonomy, you're going to be, if you thought you were a leper the last time around, you're going to be the greatest leper who's ever been seen. And the news media and everybody will find you and call you out. They'll start saying this person in this town at this decided that they're not going to do for the greater good what needs to be done. And it's worse than 1984 at that point. It's worse. I mean, how isn't it like exactly like that? And, in the meantime, most of humanity is distracted because Vladimir Putin is just bad and there's no reason for what he's doing. And, we need to send our money to a foreign country and we have no idea what they're going to do with that money, who's going to receive that money, and then who's going to administer the money to people who supposedly need it, right? So, yeah. Shanghai is a big deal. You really need to look into that if you haven't been following. And that's it. That's my video. Thanks for watching.